Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies and insights from established experts who have achieved remarkable success in their fields. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Nicki Zevola Benvenuti, author of The Best Digital Marketing Book. It's a fascinating book and it's very inspiring. Nicki's journey has gone from, a student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine to becoming the president and CEO of AEK Solutions, where she leads impactful marketing initiatives for her brands across various industries. And today we're going to explore her remarkable career transitions, her data-driven yet creative approach to digital marketing, and the powerful strategies that she shares in her new book. So without further ado, Nicki, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on. I'm excited to dive into your strategies and insights. But before we do, I was wondering if you could just share a little bit more about yourself with our audience today. How did you end up in this field, and what exactly led you to writing your first book?
Sure. So saying it as succinctly as I can, in 2007, I was a pre-medical student, and then I became a medical student in 2008, but at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. I eventually became an MD PhD student, and I was studying to be a dermatologist. And I just realized that there was a lot of science behind skincare and beauty products. And at the time, this was, the OG days. People weren't talking about that type of science, online and in blogs. And so what I did was I started a skincare blog to teach women the science behind skincare products. In 2011, it was named one of the 3 top skincare blogs by Shape Magazine. It was very popular online and on social media. And then some of our advertisers, larger brands say to me, hey, why don't you start to build some of our traffic? And so in 2014, I started to do consulting work for a number of our advertisers. And eventually in 2020, after leaving FutureDerm, I ended up actually with my digital marketing agency, AEK Solutions. And so that's been going strong since 2020.
Hey, an incredible journey right there, kind of scaling the ropes like super fast too, which is incredible. It's really awesome to hear about people who have not only, found a passion in what they're doing, but have just, really been able to make something of it and also to inspire others and help them too. And clearly that's what you've been able to do with your book and your solutions. So a little bit about your life experiences. You've worked with major brands like Neutrogena and celebrities like Mark Wahlberg's performance-inspired nutrition company. What's the biggest challenge in scaling from a personal blog to working with these high-profile clients?
I think that the biggest thing is that, with working with, startups and small businesses, the goal is to be like David versus Goliath. You can be nimble, you can be fast, you have to be agile, and you have to get your message out there fast. You can do a lot of tests, and you can start to really move the needle very quickly. Whenever you're dealing with larger businesses and whenever there's any sort of celebrity involvement, the risk is far higher. And so you always have to have a constant risk assessment going on with every single campaign that you have running. And you have to make sure that, it's not going to, rub any of their target demographics or personas the wrong way. And so, I would say that that's probably the biggest differentiator, is just rather than the focus being, 95% on growth, the focus has to, be, at least, 30-40% on risk.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for sharing that insight, because a lot of our listeners today are probably balancing the same kind of scaling difference there. So I like the metaphor you made there. It's great insight. Thanks for that. My next question for you, Nicki, is, in the book you discuss common SEO mistakes that businesses unknowingly make all the time. So what's the most damaging SEO mistake that you see companies making in 2025?
I think that the biggest mistake that I see in 2025 now, mind you, now in 5 years will probably not be a faux pas, but is using too much AI. I think that people are very turned off whenever you get to a website and it's just like everything is spectacular, everything is magnificent, and it obviously sounds like AI wrote it. I think that, Google doesn't give the algorithm obviously to digital marketers and we have to kind of figure it out. But from what we can ascertain as being part of the algorithm right now, your audience members' time on the site matters. The number of times that your blog post or article or page is being linked to absolutely seems to play a role. And, in order to make people engage with your content or want to share it, you really need to make sure that the content is informative, it's engaging, and it's well written, and it's not clearly written by AI.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because AI is a pitfall when it comes to SEO or just, any task these days. It's a great tool. It's really being developed, but you can't rely on that solely. You do need a little bit of a human discretion. I see exactly what you're saying by that. It happens all the time in the writing industry as well.
And we tell our clients all the time, that at least 30% of your articles should really be written by humans or have, insights from people at your team. You have to just keep in mind that, if you don't want to say the same things that your competitors are saying, when you're using AI, you're getting an aggregate of what your competitors are saying on things that you've said beforehand. So if you want to have original thought, if you want to be a thought leader, you really need to create, unique and value-added content.
Nicki, I think we're literally on the same page with this because, you're right, by nature, AI just draws from whatever's out there. It's meshing it together and it's spitting it back to you. So, especially in the writing world, just to bring that up again, because our listeners today are also authors themselves, by saying, write me this blog article, you're not only getting that spitball back from whatever's already out there, but it's going to sound bland just by nature because, innately you've already read the same content as somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's a huge factor that goes into it.
And I do think in the future it'll be different. I think that in the future, I think that, AI will be able to come up with unique thought. But right now I feel like, it's more of an aggregate.
Yeah. And, I love one thing I've noticed about you in this podcast is that you advocate for staying on top of the ball with things, really understanding what's going on in the world. There's been a couple of times today we've mentioned that, you need to know what's going to be updating. What's relevant today is not going to be relevant tomorrow. That's the whole point of your book. So I think that's really cool. That's a good tip for everybody to implement, is that one thing might be relevant now, but won't be relevant later on. So it applies to many areas of life. So, as president and CEO of AK Solutions, I'm wondering, how is your leadership style influenced by all these experiences in both medicine and entrepreneurship?
I would say that there were a lot of lessons to learn. I can remember from my first day of medical school, I think the preceptor started class 20 minutes late. Half the time, if you meet with a potential employee or much like a customer in business, if you're 20 minutes late, it's a big faux pas. And just some of the, almost like servant-led leadership. I think that a lot of times, servant-led leadership is the best style, to always put the other person and their needs, almost above your own. When I first started in business, I was very much not like that. But over time, I've learned to kind of lead more with my empathy, encouragement, compassion, intuition. And I think that that's helped me be a better leader, just really connecting first and then, focusing on the objectives at hand.
So, based on all these experiences and how, you shaped your leadership practices, I guess I'd like to dive a little bit more into, sort of the writing strategies behind your book. In your recent blog posts, for example, you've covered kind of A/B testing for Facebook ads. So I'm wondering, do these blog posts have a lot to do with your book? Was there a lot of parts to play from the blogs to the writing?
So I think that the book really did a lot of different things. First of all, I think that a lot of times I'll meet with potential clients and sometimes, friends and family, and they'll ask me for digital marketing advice, but they don't necessarily have the budget to work with us, at AEK Solutions. And so by having a book able to share that knowledge with others, and then they can kind of almost like do it themselves if they're interested in researching and learning more. I think another thing is that the book is meant to be published every year. So like there will be another edition coming out in April or May 2025. The first edition came out in April 2024. And I think that in so doing, the algorithms online are just changing so rapidly. And I feel like, ironically, whenever the algorithms change, people are talking about it online. There's not a lot of print books that you can pick up that will tell you, hey, in the past 6, 9, 12 months, this is what has actually changed, along with some of the best practices. And so that's what I wanted my book to be. I wanted it to be an annual guidebook, essentially letting you know the tips and tricks that work now, as well as the tips and tricks that, classically work in digital marketing and some of the best practices.
That's an incredible strategy because, you want your content to be evergreen and always, relatable, and, that you're able to implement as you're reading it, like whatever time frame is that somebody might be reading it. So I'm wondering, did you come across any strategies in making sure that this content was just fresh and, ready to go, or perhaps maybe it was easier than I might be assuming?
I think the best way to tell you about how I knew that something like this was needed, and hence like strategy for writing it, is that whenever Google comes out with a new release, we know it immediately because we are constantly tracking KPIs for our clients, and we constantly keep our finger on the pulse of key metrics for our clients. And sometimes, it's like flicking a switch, and all of a sudden we'll look and we'll say, oh my goodness, we need to start having people with, medical or doctorate degrees, writing these medical articles on the, or there was another update to Google for SEO purposes. And all of a sudden we realized that, oh my goodness, for SEO purposes, like the articles that were short are now getting downgraded. And, a couple years before that, it was the converse. And so these are things that we're learning on the front lines. And then to ensure that this isn't just isolated one-off experiences maybe occurring, I also do my research and I follow other marketers, like Neil Patel, Seth Godin, and a number of others online. And so I make sure that what I'm reporting just isn't existing in a box, and that, others are experiencing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I, always tell, authors and clients to do, is to be up to date and understand what others in the field are coming out with. And that kind of gives you insight about, what's already been written, what needs to be written about, how we can better improve all of that. It's, a whole spectrum, I would say. So kind of branching off of that, I mean, clearly, this takes a lot of balancing on your end, between, running the business, family responsibilities, and also writing as well. I think this is a tip that a lot of our listeners today could benefit from is, how do you balance all of these different hats? And especially when you were writing the book too, it must have been a struggle to fit into a packed schedule.
I finally got to a point where I had been talking about writing a book and doing a guidebook and keeping it up to date for so many years, and then just not biting the bullet and doing it. But in 2024, I turned 40 years old, and it became, like a milestone birthday. And it was kind of like, we have to do this. And so how I did it was I actually started with 5 minutes a day. And it was just, no matter what, like I have my little timer, a little kitchen timer, but I had 5 minutes a day. And no matter what, I would have to write 5 minutes. And you would be surprised, 5 minutes over the course of a month actually turns out to be 150 minutes or 2.5 hours of writing. And, and some people are going to be like, oh, well, like, some of that's like opening the file and whatnot, but you're still getting about 2 hours of solid writing. And about 6 months in, I had about 50 pages in. And at that point, I started to work with the Authors on Mission team. And I was like, hey, can you guys hold me accountable? I also work with a business coach. And I was like, you know what, like I want to get this done in the next 6 months. And so then I worked on an accelerated path up the number of minutes per day and was able to finally get it done.
I think it's really cool that you have that timer literally with you right now today too. That was a cool little visual that you showed us, because it just it grounds it in realism. I mean, you're right. You might find yourself getting distracted. I was actually going to mention the fact that, those 5 minutes I usually spend opening the document, opening my web browser, and then getting comfortable in my chair, and then, timer's up. It's actually, I feel like that's actually trending real these days, of like, I'm going to write until the candle burns down, right? And then this blows out right away, and you're like, I'm done. But, to get to my point is that, it does require some commitment. And, even if you are giving yourself those small blocks of time, it does add up. And I'm glad that you were able to find support with our team. That is a service that a lot of our clients do need, is, somebody to check in on them and send them those emails weekly and be like, hey, have you reviewed chapter 2 yet? And then you're like, oh man, like I should really get on that because these people are, waiting on my review. So it's a great strategy too to have a schedule, that timer, and a team behind your back. That being said, I'm wondering, were there any other challenges you encountered during the writing process? Any specific chapter or topic that was a little bit difficult that you had to overcome?
I would say that getting AI, the chapter on using AI technologies for marketing and really meeting the market where it was honestly in 2024 was interesting. I liken it sort of to like the internet in 1991. It's the future. This is where everything's headed, but it's not quite there yet. And so with some of the AI marketing tools, there was a substantial amount of time that I had to spend registering for tools, signing up for trials, or even purchasing some subscriptions, to try out these different tips, tools, techniques, software that were being recommended. And some of them worked very well, and then others didn't work very well at all. And so that was probably the hardest part for me, because I do take pride in having my team and humans and also like delivering like high quality material to our clients and it not sounding like AI at all. And so to be willing to do that in the book and to research it and discover all the tools, that was probably the most challenging part.
I think it's remarkable that you not only, put your insights into the book, but you really tested it and you made sure that it was all, sure as stone, that if somebody were to implement it, it was going to work and be solid and grounded in that research. It's something that a lot of people skip in the writing process. So, kudos. It's great that you did take the time to do that. Even though it was a challenge, it ended up being very impactful in the end.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, the reason that you did all that, obviously it led to people having credibility for your book. They know that your book is tested and true and works. And I guess in that regard, it also helps you, engage in speaking engagements, for example, which I know you mentioned to me before. A podcast is an incredible thing you're working on now. I'm wondering, can you share a little bit with our audience today and a little bit about that experience?
With the speaking engagements, basically, I've been a Vistage speaker since 2021. And for those of you who don't know, Vistage is a CEO and other executive group. It's across the country. There's 40,000 members across the country. And I travel the country approximately, once every 2 to 3 months and speak to one of these CEO groups. And, I'll be in Denver next week, actually. Really exciting. And I talk to them about digital marketing, their specific, issues that they might be having. A lot of times I get told that even though I have PowerPoint slides, their favorite part of the presentation is when I go to the whiteboard. And then I also always offer them, the book, whether electronically or physical copy. They seem to really appreciate that.
Yeah, hey, I mean, it's awesome that you're able to do that. And I'm sure, having that book is just a whole nother ballpark that allows you more opportunities for that. And you're able to, hand that book to somebody as like almost a business card or thank you for listening sort of thing. It's great that you can expand your reach in that way too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. The book's definitely, I think it's lended a certain degree of credibility. Like there's a saying, I teach, I'm an adjunct at Carnegie Mellon University now. And there's a saying, like, if you're going to teach, you have to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And I feel that the book enables me to do that very well, with the Vistage groups where, I'm presenting what I'm going to present, I present, and then I give the book, and it's a really nice summary plus additional detail.
Yeah, thanks. And to anybody listening today, this is just a sure example as to why you too should, go ahead and write your own book and make sure you have that in place, because it adds just so many layers to, different endeavors that you're taking on, whether it be the speaking or the teaching as well, or whatever it is. You have your name on it. It's your experiences and your insights too. I'm wondering, you did mention the second book. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
The second book will just be the update to the 2024 edition. So there's a couple of things that have changed, such as like the size of posts on Instagram, or, some of like per view rates that some of the social media networks are paying. They've changed over the course of the past year. So things like that I'm updating in the book, and I'll have out in 2025.
Okay, perfect. It's always good to, have that updated version as well, so that everyone listening today can be on the lookout for that as well. And, for anybody who is on the lookout, where can they reach out to, stay up to date with everything that you're up to, the speaking engagements, the book release, all that, where can they reach out for more information?
Probably the best place right now, I'm still in the process of building up my personal brand. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so right now, I haven't built up my personal brand too much, but LinkedIn is fantastic for me. So if you want to reach out, that's probably the best place right now, just Nicki Zevola Benvenuti on LinkedIn.
Understood. Awesome. And we're going to have links to that right in the description box to this podcast. So go ahead and check those out. Maybe wait for the podcast to be over, then click on those, so you can find out more information and reach out to Nicki as well. Now, before we, start to wrap up today, Nicki, I'm wondering, what other insights might you have for somebody first in the writing world, looking to get their own insights into the book, then also in your field as well. So kind of 2 questions there, insights in regard to your industry and also into the writing world.
I would say that my best insights in terms of writing would be, first of all, that, it's like Jerry Seinfeld said, he forced himself to write, a joke every day and put the X on the calendar. I have a calendar hanging up there. I force myself to write every single day. There are days when you absolutely love it and, it just flows right through you. And then there are days where you might as well be trying to walk through a brick wall. It's almost impossible. I'm watching the seconds tick down. But you have to make it a consistent practice, and over time, you'll definitely get further by making it a consistent practice than by doing it intermittently or whenever you feel like it. The other thing is, I would just always say that whenever you're writing a book, especially something nonfiction, you always just kind of want to picture whoever you're writing to and almost feel like you're talking to that person and connecting with them whenever you're writing. You want to be sure that, you're not talking at people, but, just it's almost like you're in person and you're the things that you've actually said in person that you're getting in your book. And in the field of digital marketing, I would just say that the biggest thing right now is that, marketers just really need to be willing to kill their darlings. It's very hard to work very hard on the campaign and just see it fail. It's a bell-shaped curve. Most digital marketing campaigns will fail. It's really 2-3 standard deviations above the mean where you're getting that really low cost per click, that really high conversion rate. And you really need to be doing a lot of iterations and testing everything. And, I think as marketers, we can be very proud of what we create in our creative. And I think that, being willing to just, take a step back and, just looking at them like data points, almost like a scientist, and allowing some to succeed and some to fail and turning off what's failing, I think is very important.
Understood. Yeah. These are all incredible insights for people to apply, whether they're trying to write their own book or implementing it in their businesses as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. It's really useful things that we can implement ourselves. So with that, I'm wondering, we know how to connect with you, we know how to reach out, we know to look on for the next book. So my friends, today, if you're listening, be sure to check all that out. And without further ado, that kind of brings us to the end of another illuminating episode of Authors on Mission podcast. Nicki, I want to thank you for sharing your incredible journey from medicine to marketing and for breaking down those powerful digital marketing strategies in such an accessible way. Your story just reminds us that in our greatest professional fulfillment comes from following the unexpected paths. And your scientific approach really shows that, these thinking strategies can be applied in any field. So, and to our listeners, if you're looking to take your marketing to the next level and beyond, make sure to check out the best digital marketing book by Nicki here. And we've discussed today, it's filled with just timeless principles, cutting edge strategies that can help businesses of any size improve their digital presence. So check out Nicki's work, check out her sites that she mentioned earlier. They're going to be in the description box of this podcast. And remember, at Authors on Mission, we don't just talk about successful entrepreneurs and authors. We immerse ourselves in the world and bring you the most valuable insights possible. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our others. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving your mission forward. Thanks for joining us today.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.